Welcome back to Disused Railway Diaries. Now, we've been a bit absent for this actual documentary for quite a while, but we've decided to come back to the Disused Railway Diaries. Now, for any of you who have never watched Disused Railway Diaries, basically what it is we visit various distant sites around the UK and visit disused railway infrastructure. So, what we're going to be doing today, right, we've come to a local hotspot, a nature spot, known as the Conisbrough Viaduct. And the Conisbrough Viaduct is going to be the main feature in today's episode. So, what is the Conisbrough Viaduct? Basically, it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a viaduct. It crosses the River Don. It opened in 1909. It formed a link between the Hull and Barnsley Railway and the Great Northern and the Great Eastern Railway. So it was quite an important structure. It was quite an important structure in the area because of the lay of the land. Basically, it crosses the River Don. Now, the River Don in this area is in a really steep-sided valley. Now, for the railway to traverse this valley, they needed some sort of bridge or crossing. That's where the Conisbrough Viaduct came into its play. Right? The Conisbrough Viaduct had to be constructed to get the Hull and Barnsley over the River Don and into the Doncaster area. Without this viaduct, this crossing would not have been able to be possible. So a magnificent structure had to be constructed. 15 million bricks went into the construction of this colossal structure here at Conisbrough. It boasts 21 arches. It's 1,575 feet long. At its highest, it's about 102 feet high. So there's just a few facts for you. Right, so behind me, this is the Conisbrough Viaduct, right? It's a disused railway viaduct, like I've already said, and it boasts 21 arches, right? So 21 arches from that side to that side is the complete 1,575 feet in total. It also boasts a lattice girder bridge, which is made out of iron, right? Now, the reason for the lattice girder bridge to be incorporated into the Conisbrough Viaduct was so it could span the River Don. Now, the span lengths of the actual arches, as you can see, right, if they'd carried on building the actual arches across the River Don, they wouldn't have been able to make an arch big enough. The arch would have been too big and it would have weakened the actual bridge. So to get over this, what they had to construct was the lattice girder bridge section, which crosses only the River Don. A little bit more history about this particular viaduct. It's a suicide hotspot as well. A lot of people have decided that it's all got a little bit too much for them, and they've decided to chuck the sens off at parapet at viaduct and kill the sen. So it's a one-way ticket. You don't come back from that. But that's beside the point. But look at the colossalness about it. Now, a little bit more about the actual viaduct itself. It's actually built out of blue brindles. Blue brindles are a brick, and it incorporates 15 million of them, believe it or not. 15 million bricks went into building that colossal viaduct behind me. How mad is that? It closed in 1965, right? And it opened in 1909. It formed a vital link for the Hull and Barnsley Railway to cross the River Don onto the Great Northern and the Great Eastern Railways. So that was its job. And without this viaduct, that connection could not have been made. The iron girder section of the actual bridge. Obviously, it needed this section of iron lattice girder to span the River Don, because they couldn't carry on building arches into the River Don. And the span of the River Don was far greater than the actual spans of the arches. So to get over this is they had to incorporate the iron girder bridge section, which is a span of 160 feet. Now, if you look at it today, there's been plenty of people daubing graffiti all over it, and there's also access points to either side of the actual parapets. Now, the bridge was 116 feet above ground level. So at its highest, which was the iron girder span, it was 116 feet from the top to the bottom. Now, there's obviously access, and there used to be a walkway that used to be able to go all the way underneath the iron girder span for maintenance, right? But that's gone. That's been took out of the actual bridge to stop people walking across it. And if you come and actually visit the actual site, you'll see where people have actually traversed across above the River Don and graffitied the actual girder lattice. Now, these people must be completely out of their minds, right? Who'd want to go up there and do that? I do not know, right? It's you know, I know I won't be, you know, I won't put my life at danger, but if you fell off it, you'd definitely die. And what we're going to do now is we're gonna start looking at the actual arches. We're going to go underneath the actual viaduct itself and have a look at the arches and have a look at some of the decor that's involved in the actual construction of the actual viaduct. Right, so obviously it's got a sign, right? We can see it's got a railway viaduct sign, also it's Conisbrough Viaduct. Someone's decided to put the sign here, right? And it tells you that there's a railway viaduct bridge here. You know, you wouldn't believe it, would you? With the size of it, you know, it's like, it's only 116 feet tall, it's only 1,575 feet long, and it incorporates a girder lattice bridge. But if you've not already seen it, there's a sign that tells you it's actually here. So we know that now. We know that sign's actually here, and viaduct's here as well, believe it or not. You know, it's quite straightforward, likely put, but yeah, there's a sign, there's a viaduct here, and it's just here at Conisbrough. What we're going to focus your attention on is now, we've looked at the actual girder iron bridge behind us. We're going to look at the actual summit arches. Now, so if we come over here and have a walk over here, follow me over here. This is the one at arches, and it's got a really good echo reverb effect when you go inside, right? You'll start picking it up in a minute, right? You can hear it now, right? We've got a really good reverb, right, of me. So obviously these arches, they're actually 70 feet spans. Now, they were built out of blue brindles, and they were also a pretty late addition to National Railway Network, meaning it only opened in 1909. Railway Mania, it was like back end at Railway Mania, this actual viaduct, so it was actually a last little piece of the actual jigsaw puzzle that had to be built into the actual network. So by the time they built this viaduct, they'd actually got their act together and they knew exactly what they were doing. So we'll just have a look at some of the blue brindles, and just for this foot corners, I mean, are these buttresses? What that actual arches, look at curvature of these bricks. You know, they didn't just use no for copings and for edges, they didn't just use bricks, they actually had nice smooth bricks actually made for viaducts. Now the actual brickwork itself is actually in fantastic condition for a viaduct of this age, right? You look at the actual brickwork and the condition of the actual viaduct itself, and it's in good raft, it's in really good raft. I mean, just think of elements that this actual structure actually has to take. I mean, it takes wind, it takes rain, it takes sun, you know, it takes all the elements, and it keeps its entirety. You know, when you smack your hand against it, you know, it's a proper fucking structure. It's a proper structure. You know, it's just here, and it's just standing here at Conisbrough. It's colossal, it's massive, and it's also the biggest thing in the area, right? When it was built, this structure was the tallest freestanding structure around Doncaster, and it still is to this day one of the biggest structures in the area. Now the section that supports the iron lattice girder section, which is 160 feet long, which spans the River Don. Now the actual support, the buttresses that actually go upright, support it had to be of a heavier duty grade to support the bridge in its entirety. Now what we know is that if they carried on building arches into River Don, the actual spans of the arches weren't long enough. Now the longer they made the spans of the arches, the weaker the actual arches would have been. So to get over this, to get over at Don, they had to put the iron girder bridge section in. Now, to support the iron girder bridge section, it was a lot more than heavy duty affair. If you look at these bits here, right, these come out substantially more, right, than the actual arch itself, and that is to add extra support to support the bridge and to keep the bridge intact in entirety so it don't fall down. Remember, this viaduct had to support its own weight and of a train, 2 trains in fact. Everything had to be over the top, mass up to its job. Obviously we don't want viaduct to fall down. Plus it had to take the wind and it had to support it, said it had to stay in one piece, and it has. Right, and it has, over all these years, right, it's still intact, it's in good raft, it hasn't moved. How can something as big as this not move? And it hasn't moved, and it's still intact. An engineering marvel and magnificent structure this Conisbrough Viaduct was when it was built. Biggest structure in area, and it's still here. So, how were it built? They did it step by step actually. They built each arch in turn. The first bits they built were the actual piers, the uprights. They built the uprights first and they put all them in situ. So they built each individual pier, right, to the desired height, to the level, basically. Now, the level would have been, there's a band. If you look at each individual pier, there's a band just where before the arch starts. Once they've got them piers constructed, then what they'll have topped the actual piers off with the arches. So they'll have built one arch, moved on to the next arch, moved on to the next arch. So they built it in sections, really. They built all bottom bit first, and all that were installed and put into place up to the right level. And then what they did, they just capped over. And there were arch formers put in each arch, and what they did, they built the bricks around the arch, and then they capped it off and they finished it, and they built it. That's exactly how it was built. So the actual footings, the foundation of the actual viaduct were put there first. And obviously each individual arch was built in situ and in turn. So they moved from one side of the actual valley over to the other. Now we're incorporating the iron girder bridge section. The same would have been done on the other side. So really there were two construction projects. They were actually built up to the River Don, right, and then they built the viaduct on the other side of the River Don, and then they finished it off with a girder lattice section. So when it were open, and when trains actually used it, the traffic it actually carried, mainly coal. It was a link from Hull and Barnsley. Now the Hull and Barnsley Railway was a predominantly coal railway line. Its main purpose was to serve collieries of the actual area and get to the actual port of Alexandra Docks over at Hull. So predominantly this would have carried just freight traffic, and that's what it was for. The main traffic that actually used the actual Conisbrough Viaduct would have been coal traffic, not much passenger traffic, really. Hence why it's been closed. What we're going to do now, we're going to climb up onto the top. Now we're struggling with wind today, it's proper windy, right? So some of the footage that we get from this point forward may be ruined by wind. I mean, it's proper windy today, like, I can't say it's not. So yeah, so what we're going to do now, we're going to get on top of viaduct, we're going to have a walk across viaduct, there's more to see, and we're going to get some good, we're going to have a good look at the actual permanent way. Now permanent way means track bed, if anyone doesn't know that. We're going to have a look at the permanent way that what is Conisbrough Viaduct. Right, so we're just on the track bed here. We're not on the viaduct, but we're on the track bed. Behind me, Doncaster. In front of me, we've got Conisbrough, Mamouth and Earth Centre. Looking beyond me, you've got the 1,575 feet of Conisbrough Viaduct. So what we're going to do now, we'll have a walk off at viaduct and just show you it from top side. Let's have a walk. Bit high, like. Right, so we're just on top, we're just on these rocks. Obviously, we've got Conisbrough Castle in the background, if you can see. Over there, another local tourist hotspot. And we're currently stood on this bridge. Right, pretty windy. So obviously, it has been the site of a number of suicides, this particular viaduct. It's notoriously known for people chucking the ends off it. There's some really bad stories. If you look into media of people coming to this viaduct to end their lives, so that's a bit of a sad side to Conisbrough Viaduct, you know, but it does boast that little bit of information. And if you're looking around, you're getting a lovely view of Conisbrough, and it's really good. So I'm currently knelt in a recess. This is what's known as a recess, and the job of the actual recess is when they were doing maintenance work on track. Viaducts and tunnels have got what's called limited clearance. Now limited clearance means you've got limited clearance between you and the actual track, and you've got nowhere to go. You've got limited clearance. Now to extend limited clearance, what you find in tunnel, bridges and viaducts is that they always incorporated recesses and bolt holes, and these would have been used when trains would have been going over the actual viaduct and the actual railway workers couldn't get out of the way, they would have used these recesses and trains would have gone past. So basically there were the critical safety features which were installed into the actual Conisbrough Viaduct. These recesses go all the way down Viaduct and they're equal all the way down and they're actually parallel. That's another thing you don't usually find with them. Usually in tunnels they're staggered. So you get one at that end and then you get one at that end. Well, this viaduct is the parallel across it from each other and the dotted all the way down the actual viaduct itself. Right, so this part of viaduct, before when we were talking about the columns, I said there were columns at the ground level which were of a wider diameter to the columns which were just standard columns for the arches. Now, the bit where we're stood on, right, is where the actual columns are double width. So, when we were talking about this is the wider pillar. I'm currently stood on top of the wider pillar and you can see it. It's mapped out by these copings. Look at the size of these copings. They're massive, aren't they? Capped. So these are tops of columns, basically. The columns were built first, remember? So this is where they are. You've got one here, you've got one on the other side, and obviously it goes all the way down there. But you look at the size of it, you can see where the columns actually are, and they're massive. They're absolutely massive. What we'll do now, we're going to have a look at the lattice girder section from on top. So 116 feet above the actual River Don here, this is the iron girder bridge with its iron girder railings as well. It's got railings on it and stuff, you know what I mean? These have been here since the bridge was built and they're still here. Now, it's a long way down here and I can imagine anybody who, I think this is a place where they all can, because it's easy accessible, like. Yeah, so this is it. This is what it's all about. This is what the viaduct is all about. This particular section behind me. This is what it were all about. Getting across this river, and getting a crossing for trains across this vast valley. I mean, the vastness of this valley, you can really see it from here. It's a valley in its entirety, and it is a massive valley, hence why they built this stupendous structure to get over it. We've got Storm Brian coming in today, so apparently we're supposed to be getting some really bad weather, and the weather is deteriorating. It's ruining us filming because we're having to contend with Storm bloody Brian. Storm Brian ruining Disused Railway Diaries. Damn you, Brian. What do you think happened here? The bent bar. What happened here? Something's obviously happened here. To bend this, I don't know. I don't like to think what happened here with this bent bar, but it's only a bit of railing that is actually bent. All the rest of it is actually quite straight. It's a bloody long way down there. In half. So, we're on top of viaduct and we're on actual Doncaster side after Iron Bridge, and we'll come across this large step line fracture. Look at this fracture, right? It's on this side. You can see, right, where that bit of bridge has fell in towards Don, right? Because we're just outside at Don. This is the bit that goes on to the Don and goes on to the Iron Bridge, and there's a large step line fracture here. It goes all the way down. So that bit of bridge has actually subsided away. So it's actually broken away. Now, to confirm this, right, it's on this side of bridge, and if we just go on to the other side of bridge here, it's on this side of bridge as well. And it's just on the other side of bridge, another step line fracture. Yeah, it's gone that way. It's fell away, and I dare say if you look on other side of bridge, see, we couldn't get a good look at this side of bridge from down below because there's not much access. That step line fracture will go all the way down to ground, so it has actually moved. What you heard me say in front at the beginning of the documentary is that it hasn't moved. It has moved, and there's evidence to support it has moved, but I think that's the only bit of actually movement you'll find in the actual structure of the Conisbrough Viaduct. So that's it. We've started at the bottom, we've worked our way to the top, we've done exactly what we wanted to do today. It's been a really good day filming here at Conisbrough Viaduct for Disused Railway Diaries. Weather's deteriorating. I can see rain coming in from west. Storm Brian's approaching fast, and we're really running out of acceptable filming time. So, thank you for watching Disused Railway Diaries. It's been a pleasure doing this documentary on the Conisbrough Viaduct. I'm Colin The Head, and this is Colin The Head's Disused Railway Diaries.